on me, guys. Thank you. Y'all, hey, Abby. I came all this way from Memphis, and I know somebody in the crowd. How about that? Wow. There's a lot to unpack here in these mountains. There was a super donkey, there was Artie dancing, and I think you just gave half my speech, so I hope I can live up to what has already come before me. Thank you so much. I am humbled and honored that you have taken time out of your evening to be here with me tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself that wasn't already covered, or maybe was already covered. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I know we can win this seat. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it's going to take from you. And then I'll do something that my opponent would never do. I'll take questions. So, my name is Jerri Green. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. Let me tell you what Memphis taught me. It's a place, Abby can attest to, of grit and grind, with a lot of stories of underdogs, right? There are a couple of guys named BB and Elvis that came with some dreams and left as kings, yeah? There's this guy who got a failing paper, but he turned it into FedEx, which changed the whole world economy. And of course, I work down the street from the patients of St. Jude, where they and their doctors beat the odds every day. So, when people tell me that we can't win this race, I say, don't tell me that, I'm from Memphis. I left Memphis to go to college in Knoxville. Yes, go Vols. Although that game on Saturday did give me a little bit of a heart attack. Every year they take years off my life. The reason is this. Look, I went to Knoxville at a time where I know we all have unrealistic expectations for how well they're going to do, but I have particularly hard time. Peyton Manning was there my first 2 years. Our third year, we won a national championship. Pat Head Summit was there, winning all the championships all the time. So I kind of just think we should win all the time. And when we don't, or we get close to losing, it's very hard on me. But I'll tell you this, being around and seeing the examples of leaders, right, like Peyton Manning and Pat Head Summit, taught me a lot in college. They taught me that hard work pays off. You know, as talented as Peyton was, as great genetics as he has, they always also talked about the amount of time he put into the film room, right? Studying the game, trying to get better. And the same with Pat Head Summit. You know, her famous saying is, the way I'm going to beat you is I'm going to outwork you. That's it. That's the plan. And that's my plan, too. The thing that I did in college, of course, was work way too hard. I did graduate with a couple of degrees in 3.5 years. I did college all wrong. But it meant that I got the chance to go to Georgetown Law School. I was actually there. Yes, we can applaud people who have degrees. Make America smart again. I told someone yesterday, I think our state legislature passes more lawsuits than laws, so it might be nice to have somebody who knows the law there. But I lived in D.C. during some tumultuous times, including the last time we had the National Guard on those streets, because it was during 9/11. And even after somebody had flown a plane into the Pentagon, having tanks and men in fatigues with rifles on every corner did not make me feel safe, even if I understood why they were there. Now they're here on our city streets, in our own state, in my own city, and I really don't understand, and I definitely don't feel safe. I left D.C. to go to Nashville, and I had tried out a lot of different kinds of public interest law when I was in D.C. I had done domestic violence work, landlord-tenant work. I had even gone to Africa twice and done women's human rights work. But I fell in love with the public defender's office because it felt like to me where the rubber meets the road. And the thing was, I grew up really poor. My mom and I struggled I know often we had cabbage and corned beef hash for dinner. You know, we've been joking on the campaign trail. They're saying that the price or the sales of Hamburger Helper are on the rise. We were a tuna helper family. Do you know what I mean? So I've warmed myself by a stove, you know, after we've cooked. That kind of poor. And I'll tell you one story about, this is how poor we were. The part of Memphis we lived in was not incorporated yet, and you had to pay for your garbage to be picked up, and we couldn't afford that. That was an extra expense. So we gathered up our garbage every week, and we would take it off behind this store, like a grocery store kind of thing. And one time, my mom and I were there dumping our trash like we did every week, and there was a homeless couple inside of the bin. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and my mom rushed me back to the car. I thought I had done something wrong. I had no idea what was going on. And she got back in the car and she held the steering wheel and she didn't even look at me, but tears were streaming down her face. And she said, "Don't you ever think that there's not somebody else out there that's worse off than you that you can help." And I realize now as an adult and as a mom that of course she knew how close we were to being in that bin. But it stuck with me, and it's why I became a public defender. I moved to Nashville. I was very excited to be a public defender, but I also wanted to move back down south because in DC, nobody knows what sweet tea is or fried green tomatoes. And I was over that. So we moved to Nashville, and what I learned at the public defender's office is this: if you want to help people with their problems, you got to get right next to them and you got to listen. Unless you get proximate to their issues, you are not going to find the solutions. And so I want you to know that that baby in the back is not bothering me. I have 3 kids, and you are fine, and all of us love that you brought your kids here tonight. If it makes you feel better, my kid's here too. Stand up, Bo. He's a great babysitter. If you want him to take him and run him around outside, you just let me know. I loved my work as a public defender because I felt like I was fighting for that underdog, just like me and my mom, just like the people I knew in Memphis. And that's what I wanted to build my career around. I also knew that I was very ill-equipped to fix the problems that I was seeing. One of the cases that sticks with me the most was a young boy who was about 13 years old. I was a baby attorney. Abby knows what a baby attorney is. It means we don't know anything, but we've been put in the courtroom anyway. And he was about 13 years old. His mom had been staying at home with his little brother, and she had been out of work for so long that their utilities got cut off. It was December, it was cold, it was dark. So she kept Big Brother home to watch Little Brother in the cold and the dark, so she could go to work, so she could make enough to pay on her light bill. Big Brother, they lived in public housing in this quadplex. He took an extension cord out of his window, went across the way to a neighbor's window, and plugged it in. He plugged it back into a TV and a space heater, and he set his sick little brother in front of it. He was charged with aggravated burglary and felony theft. I know. And do you know what me, as a little baby attorney, thought? How on earth am I going to fix this? All of the ways and places we have failed this mother, this child, his little brother, I know where they can't be fixed is in this courtroom. It certainly can't be fixed with him in an orange jumpsuit with 2 felonies at the age of 13. He needed a mom who could have a living wage. He needed a mom who could have utility assistance and a healthcare system that would take care of that little baby. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, who was the jerk who called the police? But understand that neighbor probably saw 2 kids sitting in the dark, in the cold. And what else was he supposed to do? And when the police arrived, what else were they supposed to do? They knew that they could either put 2 kids in DCS custody that night, or they could put the baby in DCS custody, and they could send that juvenile to detention for a night and maybe get hooked up with some services. That's the reality that people are facing out there. So that's what stuck with me, right? I wanted to be able to fight for these kids, to get them what they need, to pull them out of this system, but I knew that I needed to do more work on the system itself if I actually wanted to make a difference. Would I have stayed a public defender? Maybe. When I moved back to Memphis, I was a public defender against Abby. Abby was a prosecutor. We're not going to hold it against her. She was one of the good people. She still is. She's one of the great. And we served on the Humane Society board together. She's a big rescuer, especially of kitty cats, so she has a special place in my heart. But I knew I would be in public service. You know, I left Georgetown. I could have been a corporate attorney. I could have made $100,000+ a year. That just wasn't for me. I wanted to give back. So I did that in some other ways. I helped run a nonprofit. I worked as a public interest counselor at the law school at the University of Memphis. But I'll tell you what made me ever stand up in a room like this after a super donkey was when we moved back to Memphis. My husband and I got engaged and we moved back to Memphis to start our family. And when I became a mom, my whole world broke open. There was no way that I could continue to let things be the way they were and just fight it one case at a time. That calling for making bigger systematic changes was no longer a theory, it was reality. When I first became politically active, I always voted. My mom always took me to vote. I always took them to vote. But really active was after the shooting in Newton and those babies being killed in that classroom. And I had kids that age. And I thought, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I can't send my kids to school and pray that they come home. And it's a reality. Bo will tell you he's been in multiple active shooter, not drills, actual active shooter lockdowns this year. All of my children have been in active shooter lockdowns. They learned to stand on a toilet in their preschool in case anybody was checking underneath the stalls. My daughter, when she was 7, got some brand new light-up shoes from her grandmother, and she was told, please don't wear those to school. They sent me a note home. It said, when we do active shooters, know that we turn off the lights and the shooter might see her running for her life. 7. I said, no more. No more can I sit on the sidelines. So I was maybe bullied into office, running for office the first time. They say you have to ask a man once, you have to ask a woman 7 times. They probably had to ask me like 70, if I'm being honest, because I had kids and I had a job and I was already giving back. But because of my work with Moms Demand Action, the training they gave me, I stepped up and ran in 2020, which was a weird year to run for anything because the whole world shut down. So all the things that you normally do, like have in-person events, go door knocking, all of that was off the table. The Democrat who had run before me had gotten only 30% of the vote. It was a known Republican stronghold seat. The person who was the incumbent had been there for a decade. He was the chair of the Education Committee. He still is. I got 47% of the vote in this crazy, crazy year of 2020. We moved the needle that much. You know how much we moved it? They redrew the map. They were nervous that I'd do it again. So I thought, well, that was an interesting thing. I don't know if I'll ever do that again, but it did lead me to some really great things. And the best thing it did was our county mayor, Mayor Lee Harris, saw my campaign and was impressed by it. And he said, I want you to come work for me. And I thought, this is great. I get to do those big systematic changes. I'm no longer Don Quixote, poking at the windmills. I get to walk in and be like, how do we feel about solar panels now? I think windmills are done, And he put me to work, and I did get to work on big things like our gun lock program that you talked about. We've given out over 2,000 gun locks in the Shelby County, which is amazing. It costs $2 for a gun lock, $5 to mail it to anybody, $7 to save a life. And it doesn't only help the guns that are stolen out of cars and the violent crime that is related to that, but it also helps children who get a hold of guns they're not supposed to, because we unfortunately lead the nation in that too in Memphis, and people who are maybe going to commit suicide. We're seeing a rise in both our veterans and our teenage girls. And if they get a hold of a gun they're not supposed to, it makes them that much easier to end their life. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of how we've taken that model and moved it into our free HIV testing. We've already given out 1,700 HIV tests at home that comes with a whole packet of information about like how you can get health care and where are some support groups and all that. Because in Memphis, we're number 2 in the nation. You had all these signs earlier, so I'm gonna give you stats. We're number 2 in the nation in new incident rates, and it's highest among boys 14 to 24 and higher among our queer community. Let me just tell you, I have a 15-year-old son. And if he was concerned about something like that, I don't even know, as close as we are, if he'd say, hey, Mom, I'd like to go to the health department and get tested. But this allows anybody to order this kit, and they can order it more than once, and to order it for somebody else. And that way, we can start having people know their status and get on the medication they need to help stop the spread. That actually saves lives. Every bit of this work that I get to do are these big systematic changes. You know, we talk a lot in Memphis about crime. Of course, Abby and I used to work in it, but really, if you want to know how to stop crime, does anybody know what study after study what it says is the #1 way to stop crime? Living wage. It's a job. A job. A living wage would help, but even just a job, right? So, and number 2 is affordable housing, just FYI if you're wondering. So here's what I've done on that front. I started a program in Shelby County government called Work to Break the Cycle. You can go there right now, worktobreakthecycle.com, and we will hire anybody day one as soon as they get out of prison and put them to work. And we do pay a living wage. We have a minimum of $18 an hour, and if you're salaried, it's a minimum of $40,000, and I fought for that too. And the reason that we do that is because, do you know when you're most motivated to not commit another crime? It's right when you get out. And when you're most likely to commit another crime? It's right when you get out. So I'm not putting any barriers, and we have people who work in the health department, who work in sanitation, who work in our parks. We will put you to work. In that time that we've had this program up, we've hired 200 people with criminal histories, and we've had 0 recidivism. But sometimes it takes thinking outside of the box, you know? Of course, our state legislature wasn't going to change our gun laws. Even when, in Memphis, we put them on a ballot and asked if we could be carved out, you know what they said? No. We're going to take your tax money if you put that on the ballot. And we said, try. We'll sue you in court. Because you need to hear how many people want these things, like red flag laws, like safe storage laws, like not being able to carry an AR-15 near my kid's school. All of that, every single measure that we put on the ballot, passed with over 80%. I don't know if you've looked around the country lately, there ain't a lot we agree on 80%. Democrats and Republicans, card-carrying NRA members, people who own guns like me, people who've lost people to gun violence like me, we all agreed that these were common sense measures. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted to threaten us. So we started a gun lock program. I'm about to take that gun lock program and push it even further. Our next step in this is we are going to have lock boxes and safes inside our churches. We are going to train our pastors to be able to receive the guns, no questions asked, and put them in those safes and then call the police. That way, we're going to be able to, the pastors are going to reach their flock is going to reach more people, and we're going to be able to get more guns off the street. But let me tell you the one problem with this and how I'm going to get around it, because again, if I can't go through the legislature, I'm going to go around them. The one problem is, do you know what happens if we have a gun buyback program or if we get confiscated guns off the seats? Do you know what the state law says? It says you have to sell it back into the stream of commerce. Not you may, you shall. So, good news is I have some friends at the Metal Museum. The only ornamental metal museum in the whole country is actually in the city of Memphis, and they're willing to let us donate these guns to them for art projects, where they're gonna melt them down. no longer am I going to have to say, like I had to say to somebody who had an assault rifle, he said, I have an AK-47 and I feel like I should no longer have it. You know, after watching all these school shootings, I think this is a dangerous weapon of war and I shouldn't have it anymore. I want to publicize a gun buyback. And I'll bring it out and I'll turn it in and we'll bring press around it and more people will turn their guns in. And I had to say, I need you to lock it up in a safe because then I know it's safe. And it's not going to be used on anybody else because right now if I take it, the state says I got to sell it to somebody. It's crazy. I know. Everybody's face every time I bring this law up. It's beyond not common sense. It's nonsense, right? But that's what happens when you sign permitless carry inside a Beretta factory. And that's where we are in this state. We have gotten so far away from what people want, from what people are having affect their lives. I've been traveling the state. Look, everybody look around right now. I'm gonna tell you this, one of y'all are gonna cry in my arms tonight. I don't know which one it's gonna be, but I haven't had a stop yet where somebody doesn't cry in my arms. And they're crying in my arms because they can't afford health care. They're crying in my arms because they're an immigrant from Britain and they're afraid to open their mouth and have somebody hear their accent. They're crying in my arms because they are pregnant, already mother of two, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they got fired for something they said about immigration on Facebook of a job they've had for 18 years. They're crying because they can't afford to build their aunt a ramp after she had a stroke. And they are worried that they're not gonna be able to continue to carry her in and out of her trailer, but it's $3,000 and they can't afford it right now because they're a member of the sandwich generation, which means they have teenagers like mine that eat you out of house and home. And they're caring for an elderly person, and so they don't have an extra $3,000 laying around, and Medicaid won't pay for it because we won't take the Medicaid expansion. That people are hurting, and we have gotten away from that, gotten to a place where nobody is listening anymore. I promise you this, I'm from Memphis, I'm gonna fight for the underdog, I'm gonna put in every bit of work I can, nobody's gonna outwork me in this race, and I'm gonna listen to you. That is my promise because that is who I am. And I am going to fight like one tough mother because that is why I'm in this to begin with. People ask me if I'm going to take money from APAC or corporate PACs or what. I'll tell you this, I do have special interest. I do. Their names are Bo, Vivian, and Wilder. That's Bo over there. He's 15. Vivian is at home because she has soccer tournaments this week. She's 14. And Wilder is 8. And all of them are why I care about if we have clean air and clean water. They are why I care about if my daughter has the same rights I had over her body. They are why I care about if we are infusing our economy in a way that makes them be able to raise their families with dignity. I want them to be able to go to school here and then get a job with a living wage and be able to support their families. That's why I care about this. So here's what I want to tell you that I would do if I was governor right away, that I think will have an impact on our families, because like the shirt says, families over billionaires. Number one, we're going to defund this voucher scheme. Driving through these little towns, you know what I've noticed about them? They got one school. They got one school. My whole family is from a small town in Arkansas, Helena, West Helena, and they have one school. They don't have any private schools you're gonna be paying vouchers to. And in Memphis, in a place where we have a lot of schools, first off, Bo goes to a public school, so I do actually care. He actually goes to my high school, White Station, go Spartans. But I care about it, and I believe deeply that these small towns are being robbed of public school dollars. On top of that, in places like Memphis, all we're doing is welfare for the rich. You're looking at the numbers that are coming out, and in the suburbs, in the places like outside of Memphis, they're getting 3 times the number of vouchers as the kids in the inner city. And you know why? Because $7,500 doesn't pay for private school tuition. And in every state where they have tried this scheme, every single state, you know what has happened? The learning level has gone down. So if you actually care about kids, and I'm not sure they do because they're defunding the Department of Education, but if you actually care about kids and you care about our education system, there is no way you can justify it. And Cameron Sexton says he's going to double it next year, and Marsha Blackburn's out there tweeting saying, great idea. No more under my watch. Absolutely not. We are not going to do vouchers. The number 2 thing that we're going to do is we're going to accept the Medicaid expansion money. We're not going to leave our rural communities behind, our rural hospitals behind, the economic ecosystem that goes with the hospital. Again, we talk about those moms that want their kids to stay in town. Well, if they can be a doctor, a nurse, an administrator, they can run the lunch counter next door, they can own that scrub shop down the street, whatever it is, there's a whole economy around that hospital. And, by the way, it saves lives. And you know how I know how important that is? This is really personal to me. I told you my family's from a rural town in Arkansas. I was born and raised in Memphis. I was born in Memphis because we didn't have a hospital in Arkansas. They came across the river, had me, and my mom and I moved back there when I was 4 years old. But when my parents got divorced, my dad stayed in that small town, and he was a carpenter. He was a builder. He built things with his hands. But he also died on a work site because he was an hour and a half away from any hospital. He had a stroke, and he could not get seen quick enough. It was 3 days before his 60th birthday. I get it. And I'm a mom, right? I have given birth 3 times and I've had 1 miscarriage. And let me tell you something, every single time I needed a doctor nearby. I talked to an OBGYN yesterday and she told me, first off, they were having a hard time filling their 4 slots for OBs at their hospital. They can't get people to stay. They all leave the state because of the crazy laws that we're enforcing. And they're worried about whether they can even do IVF, much less. Like somebody has a miscarriage. I understand that when you have a miscarriage and you have the procedure, it's an abortion. Everybody needs to understand it's the exact same procedure. And if they feel like they can't do that for you in the case of a miscarriage, you can bleed out or go septic or die. Don't tell me you care about families. Don't make heroes of mothers taking care of their children when you won't take care of them to get to birth. That is not pro-life. And since we're going to have all this money from the vouchers and all this money from the ACA, I should mention we do also sit on, billions of dollars in a rainy day fund, and I don't know if anybody's driven around lately, but it feels like Noah's Ark out here. But since we do actually have the funds to do it, the third thing that we can do to really help families right now is repeal the grocery tax. Yes. I'm in the grocery store every week. Actually, my husband went to Costco because we have a teenager and he's hungry. That boy the other day, I'm not making this up, y'all. At Costco, they make bagel bites in 48 bagel bites. He was making them all for breakfast. I was like, are we having company? They were just for him. My husband went to Costco, and I went to Walmart after that to get our weekly groceries. And he was like, what did you buy at Walmart? And I was like, not diamonds, wasn't any, it was food and laundry detergent. He's like, well, I already bought a lot of stuff. And I said, well, what did you buy at Costco? Did you get a new big screen TV? Nope, it was food. There is no reason that we should continue this regressive tax on people when they're already struggling, especially when we're canceling SNAP benefits. The food lines are getting longer and longer. There's one near me in Memphis that is there. It's been there since COVID times, and it has been 2 miles long, and it just keeps getting longer. People get in line at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it goes till 3 p.m. I know, I've worked it. It's not going to get better under this administration. So that's what we've got to do day one. Because your budget, it's a moral document. You show me yours, I'm gonna show you what you care about. I would give you all my platform, and I will when I take questions, but if you want to find out more, it's on my website, and we have laid out a bunch of other details. But I want to tell you about how I think we can win and what I'm going to need from you. We are going to have to turn out our blue dots. I think, personally, having someone from Memphis is good. No offense to all the white men in Nashville, but we do keep doing that, and it seems not to be working. You know, there's a poll out there that says Marcia beats a generic Democrat by 19 points, and I was like, well, great, I'm not generic. We are going to have to move our suburbs, and when I say move them, I don't want you to think that we're going to have to take them from bright blue to ruby red to bright blue. That's not how you do it. The way that I won my seat, which is right on the edge of Memphis, was through a runoff and with 56 votes, and turned that seat Democratic for the first time in 200 years in Memphis, was I took it from pink to lavender. Right? We got to do that everywhere too. Moms that are fed up with sending their kids to school and praying they come home. Business people who are tired of watching their workers flee because we don't have a living wage here and we don't have a good quality of life. All of that in the suburbs, we've got to talk to those people. And then in the rural places, in the hollers, in the mountains, I'm going to keep showing up to remind you that we care and that we want to work for you too. We are going to have to, in places like this is an incredible turnout. If y'all all brought like 5 friends to the polls, I feel like we got this, man. But it's going to take all of you, and I'm not saying all of you do everything, right? Some of you may phone bank, some of you may knock doors, some of you may deliver yard signs, some of you may wear your t-shirt to the grocery store so that somebody can say, who's that Jerri Green? You can follow me on social media and you can retweet or share. You can push out our message in a million ways that I can't, right? We'll text bank, we'll write postcards. I'm going to need every one of you to do all of that. And then I'm going to need you to show up at the polls, and I'm going to need you to bring 5 friends that vote for us. Those other ones can stay home. And look, that's actually what's happening. If you look around the country right now, in ruby red Iowa or in Virginia, like all of these places, right? What we're seeing in these special elections are swings to the Democrat between 10 and 20 points. In fact, right here in Tennessee in Congressional District 7, we saw a 14-point swing. When Phil Bredesen ran against Marsha Blackburn, he got 44% of the vote. Add 14%, we win. When Marsha ran against Gloria Johnson, Gloria got 34% of the vote. It's neck and neck. I'm telling you, we can do this, but it's going to take all of us. We can. Yes, Terrell. But I know the hardest thing for you right now is to take the leap of faith. And I know that because I've traveled across this state, and I'll sit here in a crowd like this, and people will cheer and clap, and they'll be like, first question, it's a really red state, how are we going to win? You know? And I'll say, the first thing you've got to do is believe that we can win. If you don't have the muscle memory of ever voting for Al Gore or McWhorter, understand this is not a ruby red state. And let me tell you, traveling across this state, what I have seen in tiny little places, Roane County, we had 300 people show up. Loudoun County, we had 150 people show up. Waverly, Tennessee, we had 200 people show up. Paris, Tennessee said, our Democratic Party used to be 4 people. We packed a room with like 50 people in it. People are mad, they are energized, they are ready for change. And they're not just sitting on the sidelines and tweeting about it, they're showing up in their community centers, in their town halls and saying, how can I help? We've got to capture that energy and push it out. So the first thing you've got to do is believe. And that takes faith. So let me say this. The Republican Party does not have a monopoly on faith. I went to Second Baptist Church on Walnut Grove, and it taught me a lot of things. It taught me to love my neighbor, which means you don't cut their SNAP benefits or make their health care premiums rise. It taught me to welcome the stranger, which means you don't tear people's families apart with masked, armed men. And it taught me one more thing. It taught me a story about a little kid named David who was outmatched, who had not the size, not the strength, not the weapons that Goliath did. And there was just no way that he could win. Everybody knew that. They already knew it before he stepped out there on the field. But it turns out he did win, and he won with just a slingshot. You all, you're my slingshot. I'm the one standing up here, but I have all of you behind me. And together, all of us can change Tennessee. I mean it. Do you believe? Yes. Do you believe we can win this election? Are you ready to get to work? Let's do it! I just did that so I could have a sip of water. No, thank you.